There was a 12-year-old boy that I worked with at a crime victims center. His sister, who was my client also, disclosed that their father sexually abused her. This boy was so angry at the sister for ruining their family. He was angry at his dad and very ashamed by what he did. He felt tremendous amount of pressure because now he was the only male in this house, and in his culture that was a huge deal. He was very guarded with me and refused to talk. We'd have session after session where he wouldn't communicate, he wouldn't talk, he wouldn't do any art, just 45 minutes of nothing. So one day, I took him to the conference room and I had large paper out, 18 by 24 inch size, and some wide paintbrushes and some paints. He eventually started to paint. He started painting stroke after stroke, filling page after page of color. He worked quietly but intensely. After a few minutes, you could just see his whole body soften and relax. From that point on, he was able to talk about his sister's abuse, as well as participate in art therapy sessions. This boy needed the large paper to feel safe enough to let out all of the emotions that he had. And that is art therapy. It's based on the belief that self-expression can be helpful in resolving inner conflicts, developing interpersonal skills, managing behaviors, lowering your stress, and improving your self-awareness. Many people will need a reminder that having artistic talent is not necessary in participation in art therapy. Art therapy's purpose is not to produce impressive artwork, but rather to explore the emotional content of that art. Painting is a very loose medium, though it does have the ability to transform a session. It allows a client to create something that becomes a stepping stone for further discussions. Many people are familiar with drawing, and using this medium can minimize any apprehension that someone might feel as compared to using other materials. When you think about a drawing, you think about pencil drawing particularly, you think about the line quality that it gives, the structure that it gives on the page. A pencil can give someone way more control than compared to a chalk pastel, for example. Sculpture can provide a client with a multidimensional way to view themselves, to view their artwork, but also to view their life and their struggles. Working with some sculptural mediums allows for a very kinesthetic experience. For example, working with clay. You'll see some clay work. Collage work is a very passive form of creating, as you're using magazine images and word titles to express your thoughts and feelings on a page. Once the collage is completed, there's always an opportunity to discuss this further with the person and discuss what the meaning of all the images that they chose are. Writing can be used in a few forms for therapeutic value. I often have clients create a list of keywords that may describe their relationship struggles or any other struggle or situation that they might be dealing with. And from that list, they can create a poem or write further about it. I also have many clients maintain an art journal where they'll draw an image and then write about it. And this can always be explored further in sessions to help them relate this to their current situations or whatever it is that they're struggling with or needing assistance with. Art therapy is a three-way process, and it's often referred to as having a third hand. The three components are the client, the therapist, and the created image. When someone struggles with putting their feelings and thoughts into words, the creative process can be extremely useful in providing a unique means of expression. According According to the World Health Organization, there are 450 million people worldwide suffering with a mental illness. There are 40 million adults in the US, that's 1 in 5, suffering with anxiety. 300 million people of all ages around the world suffering with depression. And because of these high numbers, and if depression is not treated and left mistreated or not treated, people can turn to suicide. There's 800,000 people who die from suicide each year. Because of these high numbers, alternative therapies are needed. And I believe that art therapy has the power to help someone manage their mental illness and progress. Art therapy has the ability to calm the nervous system. When we are focused on creating, our attention shifts from those ruminating thoughts to our creative thoughts. This shift allows the nervous system a chance to regulate itself, which in turn allows the space in our brain that we need to process our challenging experiences. If participating in art therapy can help someone manage their depression and lower the risk of suicide, then it's a success. And if it can help someone live life with less anxiety, without that constant worry, then again, it's a success. Alicia has been suffering with social phobia. She constantly worries about being judged by her peers, to the point where she becomes unable to interact with them. In a preliminary session, she drew a picture about her anxiety. The red marks she discusses indicating the anxiety she feels in her neck and her chest. The black marks indicate her sense of suffocation and her difficulty breathing. The blue marks indicate her sadness at not being able to interact with her peers the way she wishes she could. In the same session, she came up with a list of key words about her anxiety, and she wrote about them. Her words were poignant. She wrote about presenting a fake Alicia because she's so afraid to share who she really is. Having this fake Alicia be rejected by her peers is far less devastating than having her true self be rejected. In this last image, she talks about feeling disconnected. And she describes the outer edge, the external, as her peers, her school life, and her home life. And there's a lot going on. And the internal, she talks about it being her, disconnected from the external, different from the external, and blank. Rene is a 10-year-old who has a long history of abuse and neglect. In one session, she began this booklet about an incident that occurred while she was with her abusive mom. It's always amazing to me when a child who's experienced so much trauma has the ability to process any of it on any level. And for this child, the art holds the key for her to continue to grow and heal and to process all the experiences she had to go through. Rene only completed the first chapter of that booklet, and most likely that was because that was all she could tolerate at that moment. But she has since been able to talk more about that incident and other abuse incidents that have happened to her. This last image is about her dad and her relationship with him and how he constantly disappoints her. Through this medium, she begins to process these complex emotions and tries to find ways to make sense of all of her experiences, trying to find the strength, the courage, and the confidence she needs to continue to interact with her family members. completing her second year of college, Bethany's mother died very suddenly. She speaks about her initial shock and her tremendous grief that she feels about her mom. She had the support of her friends, but at the age of 19, none of them had the experience of losing a loved one of this magnitude. She talks about her deep, penetrating sadness and how she withdrew from many social situations because she felt that no one understood her, no one could relate to her. In talking about this painting she did, she talks about this woman not having a mouth or any recognizable fingers. And she equates this to some of the things that she misses most about her mom. She's no longer able to talk to her mom, hear her voice, listen to her mom sing. And she's no longer able to touch her mom, be held by her mom, or ever even get a hug from her. Bethany couldn't verbalize these frustrations and yearnings directly, but was able to describe them through the aspects of this painting. Diane is a 29-year-old living in suburbia with her husband. One day, on her way to work, she hears of the horrifying news that 2 planes hit the World Trade Center. Her life is altered forever. As you might guess, Diane's husband was in the buildings. In the aftermath of the following days, her worst nightmares are realized. Diane's emotions range from deep sadness to weeping uncontrollable to extreme rage at what happened to her husband. She experienced nightmares, excessive worry, had a deep penetrating sense of loneliness, and suicidal ideation. Diane found that creating art was a challenge for her. She had so much emotion that she had difficulty processing any of it. She was haunted by her art. In this painting, she talks about this woman being vulnerable, frightened, and fearful, unable to see the person who is tearing out her heart. After this painting, she switched mediums and began working with clay, where she talks about feeling a very powerful release from it. She created this sculpture of Ground Zero. Not only for her does this sculpture represent the devastation of the site and the devastation in her own life, but it represents all of the unanswered questions that she was left about her husband's final moments. Now we have Michelle's story. The disintegration of her marriage left Michelle carrying a sense of failure and a tremendous amount of anxiety, anxious about starting over in a new home, in a new neighborhood, and as a single mom. Her art allowed her to talk about the transitions and phases that she went through over the course of several years. When discussing these masks, she talks about the different faces that she's had to wear just to get through life. Some of the masks, she talks about this childlike innocence. And yet others, she talks about the intensity of the emotion that she felt every step of the way. And still she shares thoughts about another mask or two that describes her strength that she found and that got her through the tough times. And yet one mask she talks more about and describes it as grotesque, and speaks of the uncoupling act being a process that created many monster-like experiences for her. Having mental illness is often seen as a weakness, and those with mental health issues or mental illnesses often carry self-shame. One way to address this stigma is to educate people on mental health mental illnesses, and the various treatment modalities available to them. As we have heard from the statistics, there are millions and millions with mental illnesses. And unfortunately, as we hear quite frequently in the media, so many people are feeling so deeply disturbed that they take their own life. Three of the case presentations that I have shared with you all today happen to be of one woman's life journey. And that woman is me. I am the woman whose mother died at age 19. I am the woman whose husband tragically died on 9/11. And I am the woman who's had to reinvent herself yet again after getting a divorce. I'm here to say that yes, I've struggled with depression and anxiety from time to time. And it has gotten even so bad that even suicide was a thought. But it has not defined who I am. I have been able to overcome these issues with the proper help, including therapy, support systems of a great family and friendships, yoga and meditation, and yes, of course, creating art and art therapy interventions. Dealing with my own difficulties in healthy ways has proven to make me a better family member, a better friend, and by far, absolutely a better therapist for my clients. There is hope for anyone struggling in silence. And I encourage everyone to reach out to someone who might be struggling, to lend an ear to someone who might need to talk. Maybe go the extra mile and help someone get hooked up with services who might be deadened by depression or frozen by fear and unable to do it themselves. Connect with people in real time, face to face, not just through a text message. If you or someone you know is suffering, I hope that I have offered you some hope for brighter days. And if the methods and techniques discussed here today resonate with you and you'd like more information about art therapy or to find an art therapist, reach out to the American Art Therapy Association and they would be happy to help. Thank you for your time.